Hello, Product-Led Summit. My name is Gibson Biddle, and I'm here to talk today about Netflix's 2020 product strategy. I'm going to talk a fair amount about retention and give you a glimpse of today's current Netflix product strategy. And I want to begin talking a little bit about my early career. The first hit software I ever built was called Elmo's Preschool. This is in the 90s. I was the co-founder of a kids software startup called Creative Wonders. And this is the same year that Oprah Winfrey threw Tickle Me Elmo's onto the stage, and that begat the hit. And we went on to sell that company, Creative Wonders, to Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful of Shark Tank. And he was the CEO of the learning company. And then helped the learning company to grow, making Reader Rabbit and Oregon Trail software. And then eventually sold that company to Mattel for over $4 billion, a big deal at the time. But in fact, this turned out to be a celebrated disaster because a year after the acquisition, the learning company was spit back out of Mattel. And as it turned out, it was one of the worst acquisitions of all times, a loss of $3.6 billion. And the key learning for me was I had built up software. In perfect hindsight, I had failed to build hard-to-copy advantage. And so other companies were able to copy and emulate what we were doing. And that's why the valuation fell. And it was a big learning for me about the importance of building hard-to-copy stuff. This is Reed Hastings. He's the CEO of Netflix, and most folks may not know that or remember that Netflix started as a DVD by mail company. And so I joined Netflix in 2005. And this is when I learned a lot about product strategy. And really, this marks the back half of my career where it's been much more successful than the first half. So by background, I joined Netflix as a VP of product in 2005. And by 2010, I moved on to my next startup, which is Chegg. It's a textbook rental and homework help company that saves students billions of dollars renting instead of buying. And it went public in 2014. Last 5 years, I've been very focused as a speaker, as a teacher. I teach both at Stanford and INSEAD in Europe. I'm also an advisor and just love to teach. So there's really 3 chapters to my story today. The first chapter, I'm going to introduce a few product strategy frameworks, and I'll go in depth on one of them. And then I'm going to take those tools, models, and frameworks and say, this is how they would be applied if I were running product at Netflix today. And then I've got 2 juicy what would you do cases. They're modern day, but the intent is to test drive how these models get applied each and every day. So I'm going to start with these frameworks. And I just want to talk about why I focus so much of my life on strategy. And really, it helps product leaders to do one of the hardest things, which is to communicate an inspired vision of the future. And then for me, in innovation invention is hard because you have to combine chaos that's needed to invent stuff. There are surprises, but also discipline to make sure that things happen helping you in the way that you want, that they're not random. And I love strategy for its ability to help blend these 2 forces. At the end of the day, for me, product strategy is about forming hypotheses for how you'll delight customers in these hard-to-copy margin-enhancing ways, where margin-enhancing is just a fancy way of saying, hey, how to make money. And then, of course, strategy helps facilitate prioritization. So as product leaders, we can do anything. We just can't do everything. So imagine the 100 things that you think are important, and how do you winnow it down to the top 5 or 10? And that's where strategy is super helpful. And the last thing, it helps to communicate a plan. So I'll be sharing how I do these things. So I just want to give you a glimpse of 3 different frameworks. The first, I call it the GLEE, the second, the GEM, and then you've already heard me talk about the DHM a little bit. But this GLEE model, it helps provide a long-term vision. And it's really about helping companies to get big in their first 5 or 10 years and then lead a second chapter of the life. And then in the third, this is over maybe a 15 or 20-year period, to expand even further. The GEM model helps different functions like marketing or finance or product to get aligned with each other. And I'll ask a simple question. How do you prioritize these 3 forces? Growth, engagement. Engagement is really a proxy for product quality, and then monetization. And then the DHM model, that's all about delighting customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. And the purpose of each of these models, the first is to get people thinking long term, because in the long term, anything is possible. The second is about building cross-functional alignment. And then the third is helping folks to form hypotheses about how to compete in the long term. So I'm just lightly introducing these three models because in the second chapter, I'll share how they get put to use in the context of Netflix's current product strategy. But I want to dive deeper into that first model, the idea that your job as a product leader is to delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. I just want to share a little bit more about this. And I'm assuming most of you are subscribers of Netflix. Thank you. And so I'll share a list of things that over time we discovered that really are truly delightful for customers. And this is work, but I'm hoping that the things that you enjoy about Netflix today are on that list. And then the second is the ability to help build a business, to create profits so that you can reinvest in making an even better product in the future. And that's what margin enhancement is for me. At the beginning, the Netflix model was actually a la carte. You'd spend $4 or $5 for a DVD that would show up in the mail 5 or 6 days late. I mean, my theory is all startups suck in the beginning. But the company, almost out of desperation, discovered this all-you-can-eat subscription model, and that's still what it is today. Lots of price and plan testing. You've probably noticed that over the last 4 or 5 years, the price of your service is going up $1 about once a year. And that's really about helping generate more profits so the company can invest even more in original content. But one thing that's not as apparent is another tactic that's really important for the company today, and I call this right-sizing original content investment. So Netflix wants to have all stories be told on their platform, but they just want to make sure they pay the right amount. And because they have the member taste of 183 million people worldwide, they're pretty good at guessing or forecasting how many folks will watch something and then lining up the cost of investment with it. So for instance, I'm assuming that almost all of you have watched Stranger Things. And Netflix guessed that about 100 million people would watch Stranger Things. And because of that, they were willing to invest $500 million in the series. And so they right-sized it. And then I'll take a more arcane title, and now I'm revealing my quirky movie taste. BoJack Horseman, the guess there was that 20 million people would watch it, and the right sizing meant that they could afford to invest $100 million. So just think about the huge advantage that this is for Netflix. They want to provide everything, but they just do it at the right cost. And no other company on the face of the planet has all that personalization data that powers that forecasting. And then the last question here is, what makes Netflix hard to copy? And so I want you to think about that for a moment. Imagine I give you $500 million to create a startup to compete, and what would you find hard? And for me, there's a few key ideas, and I'm guessing you're all thinking about original content, or maybe some of you dumped the brand, but there's really 4 main buckets. So the first is the brand. You trust Netflix with your credit card. And for years, it's all been building a product that ascribes to this brand promise. That's movie enjoyment made easy. There's lots of unique technology, but I've already highlighted one piece of key technology, which is personalization. And then Netflix does have a network effect. And what it is this device ecosystem recognize that every device on the face of the earth that's got a screen is magically pre-wired to let you watch Netflix. That's the anytime, anywhere component. And then, yes, I'm guessing that many of you were thinking about original content, and that's correct. But the real hard-to-copy advantage is this huge economy of scale. So Netflix, by virtue of having more than 180 million, will be spending about $20 billion in content this year, where poor Amazon Prime is only going to spend $8 billion, and Disney Plus $5 billion, and poor Apple only $2 billion. But that's the advantage of being big, and that's an economy of scale. So I've shared the model, and so think for a moment about your job is to create these hypotheses about how you will delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. So on the left, there's 15 or 20 different strategies, And then over the last really 20 years, and then I've done a column for delight, a column for hard to copy, and that right-hand column is margin. And I've just checked, which one worked or not. So the green is good. So you can see those first 5 strategies that work in large part because they did the troika, those 3 things. And the yellow stuff, you'll see that there were some things. We actually tested advertising, it worked. We were selling used discs. This is in the yellow section. You can see the check mark there. And then lower, the red stuff, those, we actually experimented with social. The idea was you'd connect with your friends. We'd build a hard-to-copy network effect. That would be good. It just didn't work. So all those red things were failed hypotheses. And notice that the other day, Netflix got it right maybe half the time. And this is hard, and half the time is good enough. And at the very bottom, there's some current experiments. Netflix is experimenting with interactive stories, with AR, VR. It's not known yet whether that'll work or not. So now I'm going to move on to the second chapter, and I'm going to apply some of these tools, frameworks, and models to Netflix. And I'm going to pretend, I'm going to go in and out of character here, that I'm the VP of product today. So imagine it's January of 2020, and I stand up at an all-hands meeting, and I say, hello, I'm here to talk about product. Of course, this is the positioning of the product, and for years we've been working to build a product that delivers against this positioning. And then the brand promise, the idea that my marketing partners wanted to tattoo to my forearm, is this one simple idea: movie enjoyment made easy. And then the product vision over, 23 years. First step, get big on DVD. That's the G in Glee. The second is lead streaming. And now you have a digital service. And now because it's digital, you can expand worldwide. It made no sense to expand a DVD by mail system. And then the fourth chapter, I think most of you are aware, and this is a strong current focus today, is all about original content. So now I want you to think about what's the next chapter for the Netflix product, 5, 10, 15 years out. And you can see a little gleam in the eye of Netflix today. One of the theories is that they will be competing in essentially interactive stories, that over a millennia, storytelling has changed with technology, and this will be the next step. And you can see some signs of that. I'm guessing a few of you have watched Black Mirror's Bandersnatch. That's an interactive film. Or this month, Netflix launched The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is an interactive film where you can help Kimmy decide if she could make out or plan the wedding. And then the high-level metric that all product leaders in Netflix are focused on is retention. And this is the high-level engagement metric. And for perspective, at the startup phase, the company, about 10% of its customers would cancel. In the early days, in 2005, about 5% of the customers would cancel each month. And today, it's about 2%. So retention has gotten dramatically better. And the idea is through these combinations of delighting customers, hard to copy, margin enhancing ways, it can get even better. And every tenth of a point at this point is huge for making the business better. So in my first month back, I would arm wrestle with my marketing partners, with technology partners, with finance, and asking a very simple question. How would you prioritize these 3 forces? Force frame: growth, engagement. Engagement is a proxy for product quality, and monetization. And after a lot of debate, we settled on the idea that growth should be first, and the goal is year-over-year member growth of 20%. Monetization, and that's essentially economic efficiency. The lifetime value of for a customer today is $170. Perspective, it was like $100 in 2005. Keep moving it up to the right, largely through improvements in retention and some price increases. And the third is engagement, and make the product better. And the thinking is that 2% monthly cancel rate is very low. So this is the hardest thing. There might be some diminishing returns. And then the current high-level strategies that the team is focused on today, and there's there's probably 6 or 7, but I'll highlight the key 4. I've talked a little bit about the importance of personalization, about original content, a little bit about interactive storytelling, but I want you to key in on the watching experience. And so for each of these high-level theories, these strategies, there's also a proxy metric. So the proxy metric for watching experience is the percentage of customers who watch at least 40 hours in a month. And retention's a great metric. It's just super hard to move, and it's hard to do big A/B tests to really understand what moves the needle or not. So use these proxies, these lower-level metrics that are easier to move, to try to get some insight on whether the strategies are working or not. And then tactics or projects against watching experience, Ultra HD, even better video quality, sound quality, custom playback speed. I'm going to talk about a case of shared viewing in a moment, essentially Netflix Party, where some of you may notice that they're getting better and better at their lip sync, taking original content in one language and translating it 40 other languages. And I call this the SMT lockup, the strategy on the left, the metric or proxy, and then the tactics or projects. And then this is a rolling 2020 roadmap, Q2, Q3, Q4, and that last quarter's Q1. And you can see how the projects will play out over time against each of those strategies. In a moment, I'll talk about the shared viewing project for Q2 against the watching experience lineup. So this is a plan, and this is a way to communicate the product team's focus. And with that, I'll say thank you, and then I'll switch back to Gib. That's me. So now, this third chapter, I want to share 2 Netflix cases, and I want you to put this in the position of, okay, if I had made the decision, what would I do? But I really want you to see how these frameworks can help your day-to-day decision making. So the first case, I call it Netflix Party, and amidst COVID, there's lots of folks that are isolated, and there's actually a Chrome extension from a little team that's working under the guise of Patreon, and it's called Netflix Party. And this, you can see it here, it lets Netflix members all over the world to watch movies together, and you can see, this is Stranger Things, but you can see on the right there, they're chatting, they're giving each other grief, they're clapping, whatever. And so they have this social experience where people all over the world are watching the same movie at the same time. And the question I'm going to put to you today is, should Netflix execute this idea? How does it work? For this little Chrome extension you saw, that won't be necessary for Netflix. You open up a video, you create your party, and then you make it easy for other people to join and watch the same movie at the same time. So I just want to, if I nicely ask most folks at this point, I'd say like 3/4, maybe 4/5 will lean into it. Like, this seems like a good idea, especially during isolated times. But I just want to give you a little bit of consumer insight, largely about the Netflix social experiments over the years. And it's a dirty, messy history. So here are all the things that Netflix killed. So we did experiment with a Friends feature, and then in 2009 we killed it. And basically, we couldn't get more than 5% of our members to engage in the feature. And to my thinking, if you're going to have a shot at improving retention, you need to see stuff that gets used at least 20% of the time. And it was only a 5%er. And then the same thing happened. There was actually something called party mode on the Xbox, and Netflix killed it in 2010 as well. Again, less than 5% of the members engaged. And then this is a little different, but as Netflix was expanding internationally, lots of different countries, they didn't have big budgets, so they experimented with a feature, instrumented word of mouth, essentially. If you were in France and you saw a movie you loved on Netflix, you could suggest it to a friend. And if they were on Netflix, that was easy, but also it made it super easy to send it via text or WhatsApp or Twitter or Facebook or whatever. It's just magical integration. And they killed it. And, my guess is, again, it wasn't a well-used product. So what's up with social at Netflix? The main insight is twofold. First, your friends have sucky movie tastes, and I think intuitively you know this. And then there's the second thing, which is we all have lots of guilty pleasures, and we don't really want everybody to know everything that we're watching. And so this is the sort of the cold water about these social ideas. So here's the decision today. Should Netflix execute this idea? And the team, by virtue of these well-crafted application programming interfaces, is able to execute it. It's actually quite hard to copy. That it would probably take years before Hulu or Disney Plus or Amazon Prime could execute this. And there's actually some pretty amazing data from that Patreon team. So in the last 60 days, the number of folks that are using that Chrome extension, you can imagine it's kind of hard to find, plug in, et cetera. It's gone from 1 million, from 500,000 to 1 million. And then if you look at the download history in the Google Play Store, there's been 10 million downloads. So that's a sign that this thing is going up and to the right. This is a substantial proof of concept. And so the team can launch Party on laptop next month, and then they can extend it to all platforms by the end of the year. And they're ready to do it. And the question I want you to think about is, will this delight in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? Like, the way to think about this is, will lots of folks love it? I've already told you that it's hard to copy. And the margin is going to come from two tactics. One, people would rave about this and build word of mouth and encourage even more folks to join around the world. Or the second, this could get used by enough folks that it's got a meaningful shot at improving retention, from taking it from a 2% cancel each month to bringing it down to only 1.9% cancel each month. And that is incredibly meaningful for the business. That would build margin if that could happen. So the other way of thinking about this is, should Netflix try social again? You can see their willingness. They've experimented multiple times. Keep trying. And should this be the next experiment? So the question I'll ask of you, if you were the product leader at Netflix, would you launch this or not launch this? And that's the question I have for you. And I'm able to do this with large gangs. And if I put it to folks, 63% say yes, let's do it, and 37% say no. So I'm going to reveal what I would do, and the key thing, there's no right or wrong answer in this, but the key thing is the thinking behind it. So I would choose not to launch, and I want to just give you my thinking. The first is, yeah, 2/3 of us are into an idea like this, but we are not normal people. You know, right now you're participating in an online conference. I built these slides using Google Slides and recording in Zoom. I did that polling using Slido. We are not normal people. And this is the reason that whenever we would do focus groups or qualitative or usability at Netflix, I would never do it within Silicon Valley. I would go to Memphis, Tennessee, or Providence, Rhode Island. And so I'm just guessing we overvalue this thing compared to normal people. And then to create a simple service, you got to say no a lot. The reason that Netflix killed all those things, we call it scraping the barnacles. And the barnacles are on the bottom of a rowboat, and they just slow you down. And so we were disciplined about getting rid of all that stuff in order to create that simple service. And in this case, my guess is it would be another 5%er. And without substantial delight, there's no real opportunity to build hard-to-copy advantage or margin. And I'm guessing if you launched it, you'd see it's yet another feature where it only got 5%. And the last idea is, if your job is to build this experience where movie enjoyment made easy, none of this is actually easy. So think about this. Think about how hard it is to pick a movie that everybody wants to watch at the same time. Like Netflix lets you stream 3 or 4 things concurrently in the house because they know how hard that is. You know, you got mom and dad watching up in the bedroom, and one kid in her bedroom, and the other kid, this is my family, my 22 and 24-year-olds watching in another room. It's just really hard. And so these are the reasons I'm not supportive of the idea. So I have a second case. This is pretty simple. This is the results known. I'll tell you what happened. But this idea is, should you auto-cancel inactive members? And the thinking here is, you're a bright product manager. You look at the data and you notice that about 0.5% of all of Netflix members haven't actually engaged in the service in the last 12 months. But every month you're hitting their credit card for 13, 14, 15 bucks. And the question is, should you do this? Or should you just reach out and say, hey, we're canceling your service? And so this is what the bright product manager was thinking about. And the assessment was, okay, let's send an email, a notification to these folks and ask the simple question, would you like to cancel? And if they say no, we won't cancel them. But if we don't hear from them, let's just assume that they don't really want the service. They signed up, they forgot about it. So that's the idea. And the impact of this, if you were to do this, if you auto-cancel all the people that are hanging around and not enjoying the service, not using it, you're going to lose $100 million for the company in the course of the year. So here's the question. Should you do this? Will this delight in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? And we already know the margin story, which is we're going to lose $100 million. Now, let's think about the delight. Like, maybe this is the right thing to do. If you learn that Netflix chose to do this, you'd feel good about them. And then the other question is, what's the hard-to-copy advantage at work here? I'll let you think about that. And I put this question to folks all the time. So if I ask a gang whether you should launch or not launch, their assessment is maybe you should. And I really want you thinking about that question yourself. You know, you can see in this last 300 people I asked, 53% said yes and 47% said no. So I'll tell you what I would do. I would launch this. And my thinking is as follows. The hard-to-copy advantage that you're building is the brand. And guess what? This is a real case. Netflix executed this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the assessment was that it was worth spending those $100 million. And it's not like you're really spending them. Like maybe Netflix shouldn't have been getting that to begin with. And the reason is this is the cost of doing the right thing, of doing the ethical thing, and of building an even stronger world-class brand that builds more word of mouth and builds more hard-to-copy advantage. The other thing that's interesting is for most folks, $100 million sounds like, if you were the product manager making this decision, it sounds like a ton of money. But the product manager actually said, no, it's not. This is a low-stakes decision. It's only $100 million against a company that's going to do $20 billion in revenues this year. And by the way, it's totally reversible. By definition, low magnitude, and it's a reversible decision. We can undo it. It's a low-stakes decision. And he just did what Netflix does. He does quick debate, but then decide and do. And it's happened. You can see it happen about a few weeks ago. So I'd like to bring things home for you with just a couple of ideas. So I've been talking about strategy, and the strategy is about this exploration. It's about this experimentation, to find a route from here to there, from a punk kid DVD by mail company to, what I think is a world-dominating streaming service. You can see this woman beginning to explore, to go to the ocean. And so at the end of the day, these strategies are about forming these hypotheses about how you'll delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. And then I shared 3 frameworks and went and tried to lightly expose them to you. But they let you combine the discipline. They bring discipline, but not so much that you squeeze the life out of the chaos and the invention and the innovation that's required. And all of these tools enable you to communicate an inspired vision of the future. And that's probably one of the hardest things there is to do as a product leader. So I'm just going to bring you home with one last idea. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the people to gather wood, divide the work, and give orders. Teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. And that's what well-executed strategy can do. And this is from Le Petit Prince. And so with that, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you, Product-Led Summit, for having me. Obviously, a Stranger Things theme. If you know me, I'm not actually quite done. There's one more thing that I'd like to do. Sometimes I feel like a street performer. I'm doing my best to breathe fire. You've all been in the situation, you're in the crowd, and then the street performer passes the hat. And this is that moment. I usually skulk away. But in this case, I'm not asking for money. I would love, 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 love your feedback. So you can hold up your phone right now, and this QR code will activate a SurveyMonkey survey. You can click on the link, and then it's asking a simple question on a scale of 0 to 10, where 0 sucks and 10 is great. How likely would you be to recommend this talk to a friend or a colleague? And then there's one other question, which is, hey, what was good about this talk? One thing. And then one idea that would make it better. So this is my 534th SurveyMonkey survey. This is my proxy metric for talks, and I would love, love, love your feedback because it's incredibly helpful to me. If you have an Android device with Lollipop that didn't work, you can just go to gibsonbiddle.com, and I've provided a link there. I've also provided a PDF of the presentation for you. And then I wrote a series on Medium, how to define your product strategy, where I go into depth on 12 different frameworks and models. Nothing bad will happen. I don't collect emails. I don't do advertising. So that stuff is just there to be helpful. So with that, I truly say thank you. And as I leave, I reveal my own guilty pleasure. This is a current hit, Tiger King on Netflix. So I'm revealing yet again my bizarre taste. Thanks so much, Product Led Summit, for having me, and I hope you found this helpful. Goodbye.